what that sound is.
They do. Fly ball left field. Tagging from third is Suarez. Goodell comes running in. He's under it. Makes the catch. Here's the throw to the plate. It's in the air. He is out! Cameron Rick hangs on! Oh, man, what a play! Deep to right field. Way up and way second
All right, and welcome back into the Stupid Money Podcast. It's been a while since we got to do one of these, and the nice part is that if we would have done one after the Mets series, probably would have been on a bad note. This one gets to be a little more on the positive side, I'd say. Not all the way there, but some more good than bad recently. Phillies had a 5-game losing streak in there. It started when they blew the Sunday game against the Marlins when they were going for a sweep, and then they just got really outplayed by the Mets, got swept there. Lost the first game in Chicago to the Cubs, came back, won the next two, then won the first two of the National Series, and then dropped the third one, and then won the first two of the Diamondback Series, dropped the third one again. So kind of the theme here is they've played better for the most part, winning series, but they've kind of left something to be desired because they have not closed out any of these sweeps when, in reality, they probably should have won all those games. Some untimely pitching at times, like the Nationals game where Taijuan Walker kind of the blow up was interesting because there was a runner on third with one out and the Phillies were up by one. It was 1-0, and they played the infield in, and it was a hard hit ball that I think Stock gets if he's back. So the game's 1-1 with 2 outs and no one on base. Instead, it was 1 out with a run on first, and like the next guy doubled, and there was some other singles sprinkled in. They ended up scoring 4 runs. Some frustrating stuff like that. Ranger Suarez came back on Sunday, was not great. It was 3 2/3, 7 runs. And the truth is, he could have avoided giving up a single freaking run if he didn't walk Garrett Hampson, who's hitting 180 twice. Drove me insane. So, they still came back, didn't unfortunately get enough runs offensively. And the one thing I will say is, for the most part, the starting pitching is fine. A lot of guys in the offense are starting to come around. Trey's like up around 300. Kepler's powers showing up. Schwarber's power is back. Harper finally homered. Stott has not played too much because they've faced a decent amount of lefties, but overall not bad. I think what I'm kind of most concerned about is the bullpen has stabilized, but these guys are like every day. Like Alvarado's already on 16, 17 games he's played in, and they've not even played in 40 yet. That's just not sustainable.
No, I think it's been a relatively okay stretch, but like you said, my biggest concern, I think the bullpen's like 2 or 3 guys away, and I don't know if there's internal solutions in Lehigh Valley. Like the Lehigh Valley ERAs are pretty good when you look up and down the rotation in the bullpen, so like you can experiment with that stuff. But in terms of like we've seen the cost of doing business at the deadline the last few years, like trading a top 10 prospect in your system, like how you leave for Michael Lorenzen, and trading like George Clausen and whatever for Carlos Estevez last year. It's like the price to get the high end relievers at the deadline are, relatively steep. So you're banking on a lot of Dombrowski being able to identify these cheap guys at the deadline on top of like maybe a Ryan Helsley to get Alvarado out of that closer role. But I think, at the start of the season, we were talking about how we had 4 guys that we thought we trusted in terms of Alvarado, Strom, Kirkring, and I guess Romano. And Romano's been better lately, but, he's not in my trust circle yet fully. Joe Ross hasn't given up a run in 10 innings, which is good to see. But, we all kind of banked on Kirkring being the guy in terms of your righty reliever. and
Mm-hmm.
he hasn't really been. He had an okay start to the season, but especially lately, he's been pretty bad. I don't know. It just seems like he's giving up hard contact lately, and I don't know what the fix is. I'm a proponent of him throwing the fastball more, but it just seems like he doesn't have the right arm slot right now to get guys out. So, like you said, the offense is coming around. Harper's been a little bit better, but I think definitely not up to his standards. Um, the starting pitching has been really good. Nola has kind of calm some things down with two really good starts against two pretty good offenses in terms of Chicago and Arizona.
Yeah, that's been the most impressive part is like he's faced the two. Statistically, I think they were 1-2 in runs
Yeah.
scored. The Dodgers might be up there, but it's also the Dodgers have played some extra games, I think. So but I think 1-2 or at least top three was Cubs and Diamondbacks.
And even his start against the Dodgers wasn't like terrible. He gave up the one.
Yeah, he got screwed a little bit in that. Yeah.
Kike Hernandez, but other than that, like it wasn't awful. So like he's pitching, pretty good against the good teams. I think it's just frustrating because of the number that's associated with his contract, and he's been an easy scapegoat the last few years. But like all in all, I think the starting rotation's been really good. It'll be interesting to see what they get from Ranger and what that like not leash kind of looks like, because I think obviously he wasn't great against Arizona, but first game back it's going to take a little bit. But like now Painter's throwing in AAA on Thursday, so like you already have 6 guys if you count, because Walker looks pretty good to start the season. You have 6 or 7 guys that you could pick from for starting rotation. So like who goes to the bullpen? What does a leash look like? I think I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of do what the Cardinals did with Adam Wainwright and put Painter back there in the bullpen a little bit. But I'm not the biggest advocate for stretching a guy out to be a starter and then at like 20 years old and then telling him to go sit in the bullpen. But I mean, I'm not going to complain about having Painter stuff in like a late inning role, because I think it'd probably be pretty freaking nasty. But yeah, all in all, I think it's been a pretty encouraging series after how it started.
Yeah, the one thing with Painter is it's like not so much the being stretched out part. It's just coming off the injury. I think when you're a reliever, your recovery time is not as much as the starter. I mean, starters get 4 or 5 days. A bullpen guy, you might be asked to go back out there the next day. So I think there's some concern with him being able to do that coming off the injury, which is why I think they're not seriously considering it this year, at least for now. Obviously, the playoffs would be a different animal, but we'll see with that. Like total side note, him being on that Lehigh Valley team, that team is loaded. We're going to get into that a little bit because it's coming to the point where I don't know what you do with Otto Kemp unless – because, Bohm's been better, but it's still a 6'5" slap hitter. He still doesn't have a home run. There's some doubles. It's not as much gap power as you would want. He's still batting down in the lineup, and it's just like, I mean, I should have had it off the top of my head, but Otto Kemp was on cycle watch on Sunday. I just, they've been playing him all over the place to try to get him in there. I know it's like third, first, and they started putting him in left. And I saw some people talk about like Kepler in center and Kemp in left. I don't know how good, like defensively, you're going to have a drop off there. We've already had issues with defense. I just don't know if you want to make it that bad. But I mean, in 128 bats, 344, 10 home runs, 35 RBIs, an OPS of over 1.1. I don't know what you do. He is 25. Maybe it's just the fact that he is an older guy mashing in the minors. I don't know. But I think he deserves a look. I just don't know where it comes from.
Yeah, I think the best bet is probably third base, but I don't know what you do with Bohm. That like Bohm has options, sure. You can't send him down. We kind of seen what a head case he is. So like
He'd never recover.
sending him down, you'd ruin anything you have there. But then also it's like you're not going to trade him. He's a free agent after this year. He's hitting 220. Like the worst case scenario is you send him down, Kemp comes up and flops, and then you have two guys that are kind of screwed. But I think like I don't know. I saw a crazy tweet tonight. I think somebody tweeted out that it's starting to feel like when Ryan Howard was sitting behind Jim Thome, and it's like
I did see that.
Kemp's
Yeah.
Kemp's having a really good year, but that's a crazy thing to say.
Yeah, he's not Ryan Howard, and the guy in front of him is not a Hall of Famer.
No, but I think the most likely bet the biggest issue is that like JT had a good game the other night. Castellanos is like kind of hitting, but like there's just no righty slug. So like
Right.
it's you almost have to bring Kemp up with the amount of home runs that he's hit, and like you said, the 1.1 OPS in the minors so far. I think like you have to try something. The offense certainly hasn't been bad. They had a really good series against Arizona. Even the loss was 9 runs. And
And Weston Wilson's hitting now too, so he's added in this equation.
Yeah, they're doing it. I think the left field talk with Kemp to me started right around the time Kepler was really struggling, and people were kind of calling him Merrifield 2.0, which we've seen the last 2 weeks that's not the case. But like I don't know, even moving Kepler to center, like the games that Rojas has started, he's hitting over 300. Yes, he's a bonehead, and does certain things that drive us all crazy, like stretching a double into a triple with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And I don't know, the game the other night where there were, I believe it was the 9th inning and we were up 3, and he's running in on a line drive at him instead of first step back on a ball that should be no doubles defense. Like there's still the boneheaded mistakes, but you can't really deny that the games that he started in so far, he's been at least giving you good at bats. So like, I don't see the need to be like Kepler has to play center and we have to get much worse defensively. So I don't know. I think the best path for Kemp right now is third base, but I don't know what you do as far as how you have to kind of like pamper to Bohm's needs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to wish injury on anyone, and I think long term you'd still like to see we get out of Bohm. But if you could, like a perfect world, he has like a 2-week injury that's fully recoverable from, and you just get a look at Kemp every day for a couple weeks and evaluate it. I like that would be best case scenario for me. Now, like what I don't know. I don't even know what injury you'd have to get for that to freaking happen. But like a concussion. I don't know, like we get something just to get a look at this guy. I'm intrigued by it. I'd like to have him up. Crawford's back over 300 with his average. Is he going to come up? Like all of a sudden, you have 2 guys pushing, and you have right now a fully healthy team with Marsh back, Weston Wilson up, Kepler hitting, Rojas looking somewhat competent at the plate. Like I don't know what you do, because the worst bat by far now is Bohm. You kind of look at what some of the other guys have picked it up. You mentioned them. So if you're looking to improve at a weak point, it is third. So I don't know. That one just intrigues me. I just don't know what you do with it. Another person in AAA who intrigues me is McAble. We mentioned that they're already, when Painter comes up, they're going to be 7 deep in the rotation. Is he a guy that you look at in a bullpen capacity for this season, and then next year when Ranger's gone and maybe you finally move on from Taiwan, he can slide in to be, at least the number 6 guy or the long guy in the bullpen right away? He still walks a lot of guys, which is why I think they worry about him in these short stints where it could blow up really fast in a critical inning in a close game. But there's, as of right now, and knock on wood, we hope that continues. There's no room for him as a starter. And I know that there was that trade that came up today, and it was literally straight up Helsley for Abel. And I think everyone on this planet, Phillies wise anyway, is doing that 11 out of 10 times. But with his resurgence, like, I think his stuff plays the best long term major league wise out of all those guys in that AAA bullpen. So, there's a come point where you give him a look in the bullpen if needed. I don't know. He's interesting me because the bounce back year is definitely a thing.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's kind of why I worry about moving him to the pen, because he was so bad the last 2 years, and it seems like he's finally got his mechanics down in some kind of consistent starter's role, starter routine. I don't know what that would look like if he switched to the bullpen, but the guy with his pedigree, struggling for so long in the minor league system, finally getting back on the right track. I don't know what that kind of drastic switch would do. I think you mentioned what that Lehigh Valley team kind of looks like. I think it's definitely positive in the sense that we talked about before the season, and we're talking about it now, what the deadline could potentially look like in terms of what they have to give up. Crawford's hitting the crap out of the ball. Granted, it's mostly all right in the ground now, but in terms of numbers, the numbers are still really good. Abel's throwing really well. It kind of changes the landscape of what you have to give up to package something like that. There was a point in time in the offseason where Mick Abel couldn't even be mentioned in a package without at least one of those other top 10, maybe top 5 guys. But now it's kind of getting to the point okay, I see why this guy used to be the number one prospect in our farm system. You could maybe restore some value in the sense where if you're going after a Helsley, it might not be straight up, but you could do something like an Abel and, I don't know, a Saltaban or something like that, where you're giving up another, maybe back end top 10 or top 15 guy, as opposed to, okay, we need another, blue chip prospect to pair with Abel to get an elite closer.
Yeah. We'll see what goes on with that one. I think at the very least, they kind of seem to be, I know we mentioned we hate that they always have to trade these decent prospects for a rental reliever every year. They also seem to be getting lucky in the sense that there's some dude in the minors goes off every year, out of nowhere, and then they just flip him for the minors guy. I don't think we bought in too much to Ben Brown at the time. And then Clausen and Alighieri kind of just exploded last year. And now Abel this year. So in a way, it's kind of working out where these guys, you're kind of selling high on them, even though, it's just rent for rentals. But
the Cubs series, it definitely made me feel better that we shelled Ben Brown as opposed to, when they were already struggling, getting, if he pitched well, that definitely would have been a tough pill to swallow.
I mean, you could argue Ben Brown got the Phillies offense good going. They've been good ever since that game. So
Philly for
shout
life.
out to him. So I have one more kind of Iron Pigs point that it's a little difficult for me to talk about, but everyone hates Marshawn now. I mean, Stubbs is hitting 294 with 2 home runs and 841 OPS in AAA. Marshawn is 2 RBIs this year, I think. Now he's not even playing as much as I thought he would be. But I don't know, because then you lose Marshawn for good, because he is out of options, so we'd have to clear waivers to get back to AAA. And I'm sure just because of how bad the catcher position is in baseball, one of these garbage teams would pick up a guy like that. I think the sample size isn't big, but I just think he might be proving that he's not the guy. And this will be an off-season discussion about bringing back T and needing a stopgap for Taiit. So they're kind of stuck there, but I don't know. Is it time to let Stubbs come back and see what the vibes do, or where are we at with this one?
Yeah, I'm kind of out. Marshawn, my my thing with it too, and since we've had him, I've always had questions about how JT calls games. I think the first few years that he was here, if you looked at the ERA discrepancies when JT called games or caught games as opposed to like Andrew Knapp, I think there were points in time where JT had a full ERA point higher than Knapp did when he was calling games.
I remember that, yeah.
And now it's like, if you look at Nola's numbers when JT's calling the game versus Marchand, it's pretty drastic. And then even, more so if you're just looking at a backup scope, like Nola might have even better numbers with Stubbs than JT. So, I think with where the catcher's position is in terms of like the landscape of baseball as a whole, there's not many guys that really hit the ball well. Cal Raleigh, obviously. Tyler Stevenson can hit home runs, but like even Adley's having a bad year. So if you look at what the catcher position is, it's not like you're asking for offense, especially out of a backup catcher. So like at this point, you kind of have to look and see where you're going to get the best results in terms of handling a pitching staff. Marchand has a really good arm, but he's playing what we thought that JT was going to get more time off his feet this year, and that just through 40 games or whatever hasn't been the case.
Yeah, I was super. No, they faced a righty yesterday, which I think was part of it. But I was surprised. JT played all 3 Marlins games, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, that surprised me a little bit. I know because the off day today, but they said it was going to be closer to like 70-30 because JT was like a freaking 85-15, 90-10 type catcher.
Yeah.
It's still maybe 80-20 at best.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot to a little.
And he is starting to hit a little bit. When runners are on base, he's still either popping out a pitch or rolling it over to the third baseman, one of the two. But like he is driving the ball a little better than he was. It's not automatic out. He doesn't look as cooked as he did earlier in the year. There does seem to be some power coming back for him. So I get they kind of want to keep him, consistently hitting. And I know the one day he did DH, so they could do that. But yeah, I don't know. Catcher position's not always interesting for me. What they're gonna do. That's what I have on the roster.
I wish Kaiut was like a year older.
That's the thing. And I saw someone tweet the other day, and it was like, Marchand is not the answer. Taiit is 2 years away, and it was like you have to re-sign Real Muto. Taiit is not 2 years away. He's at best 3, likely 4, if not 5. Yeah, we're looking at least 3 to 4 years until he's up here. Look, the power is insane for an 18-year-old. The eye isn't that bad either. From what I see, though, the arm is there, but still a long way to go with game calling and stuff of that nature. Especially because I think they talking about like him working on his English too and stuff, which is important when you're the catcher.
Yeah.
So there's a lot that goes into this. I think he's Jorge Alfaro is what I would say, like a lefty version, like cannon arm, big power. Not sure what you're going to get in the other areas, but he's still not close. And there's still, while I think we're both excited about him and wouldn't trade him at the time, there's a lot that could still go wrong in that development. And I know you don't necessarily draft for need in the MLB, but wherever they are in the 20s, if there's a college catcher, around that slot value, I think that's worth taking. I know you don't necessarily draft for need in baseball, but that would be one where I'd have to at least consider it.
Yeah, no, that would certainly be nice, just given just somebody competent to get JT off his feet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, someone you could at least make this like a 60-40 for, 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I wanted to pull up the standings. I love how they have the wild card standings up already. It's so funny. So the Phillies are technically the 6th seed right now. So the Dodgers, Mets, Cubs lead their divisions. Obviously, we've talked about this, but Arizona is playing decent, is obviously decently well. I wish we could have got the sweep because it would have done a little more damage to them, would have made us 20-14 and them 17-17, which would have put some more breathing room between us, would have been 3 games up instead of 1.
Also would have been nice for tiebreaker purposes.
Yes, yeah. So a little frustrating there. I just look at it and I'm like, I don't know if Atlanta's cooked or not. They're 15-18. They got close. They got to 500 and then fell back behind. It's just kind of like, I think the Padres are for real. I think that's a safe assumption. There's just too much talent there. Are the Giants? Is this one of those random years what they always seem to do, where a not so great roster just somehow wins 100 games? I don't know. There's Phillies. There's Arizona, who is pretty talented. I think the Phillies exposed their bullpen, though. They're another team that's going to have to do some work in the bullpen. The Reds are interesting just because they pitch so well. And then, of course, Atlanta's lurking there with Acuna not back yet. So I'm still a little worried. Like, I know there's a long way to go, but, like, I like to talk about the playoffs, but, like, I'm still a tad hesitant with this season.
I think Atlanta's going to compete, if not win the division. I don't know. I think when Acuna comes back and Strider had one start and then he went back on the IL. Obviously, you don't know the hamstring is going to be nagging for him throughout the season. But I think when they get Acuna and Strider back, I think they're kind of going to get a jolt. And I don't know. They might. I think they're not going to go away. I'll say that. I don't know if they'll get to win the division, but I think that they're going to be in the race in August and September. I think they'll be buyers. They definitely won't be sellers at the deadline. I think the most difficult thing, one team from the Central has to win.
And the Cubs are good enough to also be a worthy playoff team this year.
Yes, for sure. One team from the Central. I don't know. Like you said, I don't know if the Reds are legit. Hunter Green's kind of taking that step forward as far as being that kind of breakout candidate. But
Lodolo's been good.
Realistically, there's 7 teams between the 3 in the NL East and 4 in the West for those 5 spots, and then factor in whatever the Reds do. So 7, maybe 8 teams for 5 spots. So it's going to be very interesting to see what kind of happens as we get closer to the summer, because Memorial Day is always kind of the separation point for me in terms of who's legit and who isn't. We kind of saw with the year that we went to the World Series, Memorial Day, we were 22-29 and then got going. Same thing with the Mets last year. The London series at the beginning of June kind of got them going. So that's kind of the benchmark the week after that to see who's going to start playing, and that's when the trade deadline kind of starts to shape itself up. So not treading water, but this is in terms of what the Phillies schedule looks like. This next stretch is definitely favorable with Tampa, Cleveland, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, 4 against Colorado, which is massive. And then, Oakland's frisky, but
they're like a Nationals, yeah.
The month of May is really interesting because that's kind of a soft spot, and then you have an off day, and then the month of May ends with 3 at home against Atlanta and 3 at home against Milwaukee. So if we're talking that Memorial Day timeline, you're getting 2 teams that are fringe in the wild card picture, and you could kind of not bury them, but kind of send a message to start the summer that they're not going to really sneak up into the picture. So that if they handle business throughout May and then, I don't know, at least win 2 out of the 3 against Atlanta, I think that we should be in a pretty good spot heading into the summer.
Yeah, for sure. One thing I got to say, because they got a lot of road games coming up, they're 6-9 on the road. That's got to be better. You got to at least play 500 ball. I know we all know they're an elite home team at 13-6. But you got to at least get that road record to 500 if you're going to make the playoffs this year. You just can't be that bad on the road. and especially the teams you're playing. Like you're playing the Rays in a minor league ballpark.
Yeah.
Cleveland is not. Where are they in the standings?
I mean, the 4 against
Oh,
Colorado in Coors, anything can happen in Coors just because of the way that stadium plays, but also the Rockies are 6-28, so anything really can't happen.
Right. Yeah, and I mean Cleveland. I didn't realize they're 20-14. They're playing a lot better than I thought. They're the number one wild card team in the AL right now, which is crazy. Like Boston's not even in the playoffs right now. That's wild. Yeah, so you got some, those are some tough-ish games, especially with just how they've been playing on the road, but it's got to be better. St. Louis and Pittsburgh at home are two teams I need you to dominate because just don't struggle with them. I know the Pirates got some pitching, but they don't hit. So with our starting pitching, just keep them in check. You'll be okay.
Well, you're not fired up for rivalry weekend?
That is the dumbest shit ever, by the way. I don't know. Outside of hockey, Pittsburgh and Philadelphia are not rivals. And now part of that is in football, they're in different leagues, which plays a role in it. But baseball, like the Pirates are like, I would take every team in the NL East, give me the Dodgers. And then I have to add in like the Diamondbacks because of the recent playoff stuff. And then I like even the Yankees, like where they are in the order of rivals for me is like 10th or 11th for the Phillies. If I was ranking teams, like it's not close to a rival for me. But if I was ranking like 1 through 29, they'd be like around 10, I think, just because of the proximity. But like there's nothing there. There's no beef or anything. Like I don't know. Like, it's so dumb.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're probably a little higher for me just because I have to listen to everybody that I went to school with.
That's fair.
If the Phillies lose, but in terms of like actual grand scheme of baseball, like they're not a rival in the slightest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you kind of laid out the schedule for me, so I don't have to do that now. But that's what we're looking at right now. So just keep an eye on Otto Kemp, Crawford, Abel. See what happens if they get a call up here in the next couple of weeks. I don't think Abel's that likely outside of some major injury stuff going on, which we don't want. But it's going to be a while till we're back. I got some stuff going on. So we'll be back sometime after that. Hopefully the Phillies, though, get a little breathing room in this wild card race because even though it's May, there's not a lot of room for error right now.